My phone buzzed on the glass table, breaking the silence of my downtown apartment. I let out a soft sigh, smoothing down the silk blouse that felt just slightly too warm in the morning sun. I didn't usually get texts from family this early, and the unfamiliar number made my chest tighten. "Claire, you're invited to Alex's graduation party." I froze. My brother's name. Alex, the very same brother I had quietly supported through med school, who once told me I didn't belong anywhere near his achievements. The memory hit me like a cold splash of water, his voice, sharp and dismissive. "You don't belong at the graduation party. Get out." I stared out at the city skyline, letting the sunlight streak across the hardwood floors. My life had moved far beyond the confines of that house, that family, that moment of rejection. Yet somehow, a pang of hurt and irony twisted inside me. I had built everything from scratch, step by painstaking step. My clients, my company, my independence, all hidden beneath polite social updates and carefully curated posts. I picked up my phone again, reading the message over and over, weighing a choice I hadn't considered in years. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely. Another part, perhaps the one who still remembered trembling hands and unshed tears, wondered what it would feel like to show up, uninvited, and face the boy who once told me I didn't belong. I tapped the reply button, fingers hovering, heart thumping. It was time to confront the past. And this time, I would do it on my terms. I remember that night like it was yesterday, even though years had passed. The air in our childhood home smelled of polished wood and my mother's perfume, sweet and sharp all at once. The living room was filled with laughter and chatter, everyone celebrating Alex's big achievement, his medical school graduation. And there I was, standing on the edge, trying to shrink into the wallpaper, wishing I could disappear. I had worked countless nights, saving every dollar I could, secretly paying for Alex's tuition. I never asked for credit. I just wanted him to succeed, to have a future I could only dream of for myself back then. But when I stepped into that room, my hand clutching a small gift I had picked out for him, a leather-bound notebook I knew he loved, he looked at me and sneered. "You don't belong here, Claire. Get out." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My throat tightened, tears threatening to spill, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the notebook. I felt a heat in my chest, a mix of shame, anger, and disbelief. How could the person I had sacrificed so much for treat me like I was invisible? Grandma's voice echoed in my memory, calm and gentle, like she could see through me even when I was too proud to admit it. "Claire, never let someone else define your worth. You carry your own fire, don't let them snuff it out." I clutched the notebook closer, the leather cool under my fingertips, and made a decision in that moment. I would not beg for love or respect from someone who couldn't see it. I would leave the house, leave the comfort and the familiar, and build something of my own. I would take Grandma's words with me, like a compass guiding me through a world that I knew would be harsh, but also full of possibility. By the time I walked out the front door that night, the party's music fading behind me, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I was alone, yes, but for the first time I felt free. And in that freedom, I found the first spark of the woman I would become. I remember the first time I walked into my tiny, rented office, the hum of the city below leaking through the cracked window. The space was barely enough for a desk and a chair, but it was mine. I had taken Grandma's advice to heart. Carry your own fire. Every dime I had saved went into this little venture, and every night was a test of whether I could survive on my own. It wasn't easy. Some days I questioned myself. Was I really cut out for this? Was I strong enough to build something meaningful while keeping the ghosts of my past at bay? I spent nights poring over business books, reaching out to clients, and learning from mentors who had once been strangers, but quickly became my lifeline. One in particular, a seasoned woman named Vanessa Parker, saw something in me that I hadn't fully recognized in myself. She didn't coddle me. She pushed me. She taught me that strength wasn't just about grit, but about strategy, vision, and believing in the value you brought to the table. I stumbled, of course. There were deals that fell through at the last second, clients who laughed me off, and moments when I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. But there were also victories. The first client who truly believed in me, the first sale that made my heart race, the first week I could pay myself a proper salary. Each small win was a brick in the foundation of the life I was quietly building, away from my family's eyes. Keeping my success hidden was a conscious choice. I posted modest updates on social media, never showing the full scope of my growth. My family thought I was scraping by, still chasing dreams that, in reality, I had already surpassed. It gave me a strange sense of satisfaction, the silent power of knowing the truth, the thrill of proving that my worth wasn't determined by their approval. By the time I was 30, I had a flourishing consulting firm, a network of clients who trusted me implicitly, and the financial independence I had once only dreamed of. My office was lined with sleek art and awards I had earned, each one a testament to the nights I had stayed up when the world seemed indifferent to my ambition. And yet, even in my success, a part of me felt a pull toward the past. Not out of longing, but because unfinished business with Alex still lingered, a shadow I hadn't yet faced. The memory of that night at his graduation party, the sting of his words, still hovered in the corners of my mind. But I had learned to carry that memory not as a wound, but as fuel. It was this combination of quiet triumph and unresolved tension that made the thought of seeing him again both terrifying and irresistible. The question was no longer whether I belonged anywhere. I knew I did. The question was whether he was ready to witness it. The invitation still felt strange in my hands, even as I parked my car in the driveway of Alex's new house. It was massive, sleek, every bit the image of success and perfection he had always prided himself on. I took a deep breath, smoothing my tailored blazer and feeling the cool metal of my watch against my wrist. This was it, the moment where the past met the present. I stepped into the grand foyer, and immediately, their expectations were clear. Alex's friends, his colleagues, his parents, they all looked at me with faint amusement, a polite assumption that I would be awkward, insignificant, out of place. I let them look, let them linger in that quiet judgment. Because what they didn't know is that I had spent the last decade building a world they could never have imagined. "Claire," my mother said, surprise flickering across her face. "You came." I smiled lightly, letting the warmth in my tone mask the fire in my chest. "I did," I said, my voice steady, soft, and deliberate. "I wouldn't miss it." I followed Alex into the living room, where the party was in full swing. He froze mid-conversation when he saw me, his smile faltering. I could see the calculations behind his eyes, the instant recognition that I was not the girl he had dismissed years ago. I let the silence stretch, allowing the room, and him, to absorb it. Then I spoke. "You all think you know me, don't you?" My hands rested lightly on the edge of a marble table, every detail of my presence intentional. "You think I've been struggling, that I've been invisible. But here's the truth." I motioned toward my phone, and with a few taps, I displayed images of my office, my awards, my company's financial achievements, even contracts with high-profile clients. The room went quiet. The chatter stopped. Faces turned pale, eyes wide with disbelief. Alex's jaw tightened, a mixture of shame and shock. "I built all of this," I continued, letting the pride in my voice resonate. "I didn't ask for your approval. I didn't wait for your recognition, and I certainly didn't need your permission." My mother clutched her chest, looking like she had been hit by a wave. Alex's friends whispered, exchanging astonished glances. And Alex, he opened his mouth, but no words came. For the first time, the brother who had once wielded his achievements like a weapon against me was speechless. "I paid for your tuition, Claire," Alex finally said, his voice tight, defensive, almost pleading. I raised a hand gently, not to silence him, but to mark the shift. "You wanted me to stay in the background. I stayed quiet, yes. But I've been living, growing, building a life of my own. And now, I'm here, not to compete with you, but to show you that dismissing me didn't diminish me. It strengthened me." The room absorbed it all. You could almost feel the weight of years lifting off me, replaced by something far more potent: clarity, power, and undeniable presence. Alex looked at me, then really looked at me. The arrogance, the entitlement, the dismissal, all of it was gone, replaced by recognition, the first real acknowledgement of who I had become. And for the first time in years, I didn't need him to say it. I already knew my worth. The room still buzzed with stunned silence, the kind that comes when someone finally sees the truth in front of them. I let it linger, letting my family, Alex especially, feel the weight of years they had taken for granted. Then I spoke again, calm but firm. I've proven my worth without you, Alex. Without anyone here validating me. And now that we're face to face, I need you to understand that things will be different from here on. Alex opened his mouth, but I shook my head slightly.
No.
Not yet. You first need to recognize the ways you've treated me. The words, the dismissal, the entitlement. They were not acceptable, and they cannot continue. I turned to my parents. And you, Mom, Dad. You need to stop measuring me against your expectations of Alex. I am not a reflection of him, or anyone else. I am my own person, and I expect you to respect that moving forward. I could see the shame settling on their faces, the uncomfortable realization that love without respect is still a kind of cruelty. I continued, my voice softening just enough to convey compassion. I will help Alex if he wants guidance, but it will not come without conditions. First, he must pursue his own dreams responsibly. He must acknowledge his mistakes and make amends where he can. No more arrogance. No more assuming I'll be invisible. He will take responsibility, not just for himself, but for the ways he's hurt others along the way. Alex swallowed hard, nodding slowly, his posture stiff but attentive. I understand, he muttered. Second, I said, glancing at my parents, you all need to let go of toxic habits, the comparisons, the favoritism, the assumptions. Support each other, genuinely, instead of holding power over one another. Respect is the currency now, not control. I paused, letting each word sink in. I am still your daughter, your sister, your family. But I am also my own woman, and I will not bend to old patterns. I care about you, yes, but compassion does not mean submission. Change is required if we are to continue as a family. My mother's eyes glistened, a mixture of regret and relief. My father nodded, the lines on his face softening, as though he finally understood. Alex's expression shifted too, from guilt to determination, the first real sign of growth I had hoped for. I let my gaze sweep across the room, taking in the shocked, humbled, and tentative faces of those I had once feared would never see me for who I truly was. And yet, even in the tension, there was a flicker of hope. The power had shifted, yes, but it wasn't about control anymore. It was about fairness, respect, and boundaries that allowed everyone to thrive, including me. And with that, I felt the subtle, powerful satisfaction of reclaiming my own narrative. I had arrived not just as the sister or the daughter, but as Claire Morgan, the woman who had turned pain into growth, rejection into triumph, and silence into authority. Weeks passed after that night, and I watched the subtle changes unfold. Alex reached out, not for approval, but for guidance, genuinely seeking to grow into the man I had always hoped he could be. He apologized for the things he had said, the way he had dismissed me, and I could see the effort in his eyes, small but steady steps toward respect. My parents, too, were learning. Mom asked for advice on handling situations without favoritism, and Dad called more often, curious about my work, genuinely interested in my life rather than checking to see if I was keeping up. The air between us felt lighter, not because the past was erased, but because it was finally acknowledged. And me? I spent quiet evenings in my office, looking at the leather-bound notebook I had given Alex that night of his graduation. I traced my fingers over its worn cover, remembering the trembling hands, the lump in my throat, and the spark of determination that had carried me forward. That notebook had been a symbol back then, a reminder of hope. Now it was a symbol of triumph, of resilience, independence, and self-respect. I realized that the pain I had endured wasn't wasted. It had forged me into a woman who could walk into a room and command attention, not through intimidation, but through presence and confidence. I had learned to carry myself with grace, to wield power with empathy, and to value my own worth above anyone else's approval. Sometimes, I still catch myself thinking of that night at Alex's graduation party, the words that had cut so deeply. But now, they serve as a reminder, not of my weakness, but of how far I've come. The girl who was once told she didn't belong is the woman who now decides who belongs in her life at all. I step out of my office window onto the balcony, the city lights sprawling beneath me like a sea of possibilities. I breathe in, feeling the cool night air against my skin, and whisper softly to myself. I gave them the truth, and I kept my power. A simple statement, a private victory, and the perfect ending to a story that was once defined by rejection, now defined entirely by my strength.